Hi there, it's been a while since I did a retro computing or a vintage computing project on the YouTube channel, so I wanted to share this new one. This is something that I hope will be unique, that not a lot of people have seen. This is a Convergent Technologies NGEN workstation, or NGEN PC. I don't know what it takes to qualify as a workstation versus as a PC. This is from the early 80s, let's say the range of like 1983 to 1985 or so. These things are fairly rare. It's not unheard of to see one on eBay. There's actually more than just a couple of them on eBay right now. So if you want one, you might be able to dig one up. But they're kind of a weird system. I remember playing with one maybe when I was like 12, 13 years old. Playing with it even before I had a chance to use an IBM PC. So these things do go back a long time. They were made by Convergent Technologies. They were also sold as Burroughs at some point, and I think the Convergent may have been bought out by Unisys. So you might find one of these called a Convergent Technologies NGEN, or you might find it called a Burroughs B25. Or you might find it called some kind of Unisys. So let's take a look at this. So it has a keyboard. Push that back as far as we can. Fairly standard keyboard. It's some unique features for the time, like it's got LEDs in some of the function keys. It's got some additional keys that you wouldn't have on a normal PC keyboard. Kind of a little bit of a unique thing, but one thing that's really weird about it, it has these connectors on the back instead of your traditional cable. They may look like RJ45s, but they're kind of short and kind of wide. That's because they're not RJ45s, they are SDL connectors. They are 8-pin modular jack type things, but you got to buy a special SDL connector to plug into there. So I do have some cables on order. When I bought this unit off of eBay, it didn't come with cables. But fortunately I found cables. You can also buy the little plugs, the SDL plugs, and make your own cables. You can buy them on eBay. You can buy SDL plugs from DigiKey, Mouser. The connectors are fortunately still available. And people familiar with old PC hardware might recognize the SDL for like some of the weird maybe PS2 keyboards or something. Maybe IBM used them for a while. So I'm going to need a keyboard cable. Let's look at this workstation a little bit. So it's got an on-off switch on the front. Flip it around. And it's got a couple more of these SDL connectors. Now you might think, well gee, the keyboard has one, maybe it plugs into there, but no. These are power connectors. So you get a power brick. The power brick has an SDL connector on it, and there's some kind of SDL cable, and it will plug into there. It's a 36 volt power. This is a modular computer, so it's built in these kind of like 3 wide modules here. So you could power this thing from 2 power supplies if you wanted to, one there and one there. Or if you have a big enough power supply, you can just plug a single power supply into it. So this is where the power is going to come in. There's little power codes written on them that'll tell you how much power supply you need. So this is a 4, this is a 6, you add them together you get 10. That means you need a power supply that is a 10 power supply. And this one on eBay didn't come with a power supply, so I have also ordered myself a power supply. Ought to be here like Monday or so. So where is the I/O and stuff on this thing? Well, if we push this, this little door opens up. Here we have a slot where you can put in a RAM expansion. This doesn't have the RAM expansion, but that's where it would go. And then we have this little door. These little push snap rivets. Now if you look on the door itself, you probably can't see it real clearly. I'll probably shoot some pictures at some point, but probably can't see it clearly on the camera. But on here it says what these are. So we've got an RS-232, a video, a second RS-232, a parallel, and 2 cluster communications. So this was actually a networked PC, which is pretty nice for the time, and it had some kind of way to cluster itself to other ones of these Convergent Technologies PCs. So you've got your cluster, your printer port, a couple serials. But then we've got this weird thing here that is the monitor port. And if we open this up, we will see, yes, these are all DB style connectors in there. Let me see if I can zoom in on that so it's a little more visible. There, hopefully that's easy to see now. So we've got your two serial connectors, we've got your two cluster connectors, a parallel, and then this wonky 25-pin monitor thing. And that is probably going to be my biggest challenge getting this thing going, is I do not know the pin out of this monitor connector. I do know that this thing has a 6845 character generator, it's got a video board in it, it supports a monochrome monitor, so I'm pretty sure that what comes out of here is some flavor of monochrome video, though I do not know exactly what. So the first thing I want to do in this video is ask anyone who has any literature on this machine, or who may have known an engineer who worked for Convergent Technologies, or maybe you have one of these yourself. If you happen to have any technical data on what that monitor connector pinout is, that would be incredibly helpful, because I do not have the monitor that goes with this. So anyway, plug your monitor in there. You might ask, where is the keyboard connector? There doesn't seem to be a keyboard connector anywhere on this thing. Well, the keyboard, I believe, is routed through the monitor connector. If you look at a picture of the monitor that would have come with this back in the 80s, I'll try to put a screenshot up here on screen, you will see that the monitor has your keyboard port coming out the front of it. You plug your keyboard in there. So I think they ran both keyboard and video through that, and then I think it's broken out inside the monitor to your keyboard. So I've got to figure out the pin out of that connector. That's going to be a challenge. So again, if you have data on this thing, I would really appreciate the resources. I have looked on BitSavers. BitSavers does have a lot of manuals for old Unisys computers, but BitSavers does not have the hardware manuals for this particular computer. They've got sort of the older AWS, IWS ones. They've got some hardware manuals on the hard drive enclosure. Don't have any hardware manuals on the CPU. So if you have a CPU hardware manual, that would be awesome. So that just snaps back on there. Now let's look at the front of this a little bit. So there are two modules here. This first one here is the CPU module. It's going to have the processor, it's going to have the RAM, it's going to have the I/O board, it's going to have the video board. The second module is the storage module. It's going to have a hard drive and a floppy drive. So if we open this little door, we will see in here there is one hard drive and one floppy drive. Now the floppy drive is a DSQD, double-sided quad density. Most people are familiar with a double-sided double density or a double-sided high density. The DSHD would be your 1.2 megabyte IBM PC drives, whereas the DSDD would be your 360K. This lies kind of in between. A DSQD is often 720K, and you would use, I'm told, your normal 360K floppies in it. It just writes them at a higher density than you would use normally with a DSDD drive. I've never owned such a thing before, so it'll be interesting seeing how that drive works out. The hard drive, I do not know exactly what type it is. I did some research on specifications. I think it's an MFM, but we're going to open it up and we'll find out what kind of drive is in there. And it's remote chance, it could be a SCSI drive. We'll find out, and we'll find out how big it is as well. So since this is a modular computer, you can separate the modules. Pull it forward just a little bit. There's actually a little lever right here. So if we flip this lever up, and all the way up, that's not, there, it's just taken. There we go. Got it separated. So we see the two modules come apart, and there is a connector down here that goes in between them. There's a bunch of little pins on this one, and then this one here is a socket. Now if we look over here, we should be able to pull this off. And there you can see that this disk module, it's got it's got the pins on this side, and it's got the socket on that side. So you could actually keep adding more and more modules to this computer. This is kind of cool. So you could, there's like a graphics module you could add. There is disk expansion. You'll see there's kind of an extra header there. I'm guessing that goes to the disk expansion. There's a double floppy unit. Maybe you could even put more than one floppy hard drive unit. I don't know what all combinations you can expand in, but that's kind of its expansion capability. So I think that's kind of neat. Next up, let's see if I can get inside this thing and see what kind of hard drive is in it. Here, there we can get a good look in the back. We can see we do have what appears to be an MFM drive. There is 2 connectors on the hard drive. One, oops, I don't want that screw in. There's 2 connectors, one up here, one down there. Looks like a typical MFM, plus the power connector there. And we've got a usual floppy connector there. So that's kind of what I wanted to know. Now, an interesting thing on this is you have these 2 boards here, which are DC to DC converters, I think. They plug in kind of on the sides. They look like they're pretty much symmetrical. And this, since there is 36 volts powering all of this, there is these 2 converters here that'll convert the 36 down to something more functional, 12 or 5 or whatever the thing ran on. Let me see if I can get this fan connector loose. Three-pin connector, the 2-pin fan. Now this is interesting. I just wonder what is in this gray box beneath the fan. Who knows? Could be a thermostat in there. Could be a alarm if the fan isn't running. Okay, so we can get a pretty good look at these drives from the sides. Now it looks like to get them out we'd have to take this top piece loose. It looks like there's 4 screws holding them on there. There's actually screws going in from the bottom too. It looks like this top is just going to pop up, and then this bottom, is it just going to pop up too, or is it going to slide? It's like the bottom, maybe this piece will pop up, and then this piece will slide forward, and then we would be able to get the drives out. I think maybe we'd want to unhook all of these wires back here first. So the floppy drive is an FD55 GFR. It's not actually the drive that I thought was in there. I actually see the drive nameplate is in here. It's actually a TAC drive. I'll have to look up FD55 GFR and see exactly what drive that is. Maybe this is not actually a DSQD, maybe it's actually a DSHD. We'll look up that part number. So I can tell which DC converter is which. So this one here is marked 12 volt, and this one here is marked 5 volt. So those are the 2 DC-DC converters. Just kind of looking around to make sure there's no gunk dripping out of any capacitors or anything like that. They look to be in good shape. Everything in here looks to be in good shape. So over on this side, you see that clearly? We've got the controller board. What all is on this board? Got a WDC WD2793, that's probably a controller chip. A WD1010, that's probably another controller chip. Generally looks like a nice clean board, looks to be in good condition. Don't see any issues with that. And maybe to get the drive assembly out, what I'd really want to do is to take the two DC-DC converters out. What does it take to do that? That just snap out of there. You just pull up. Yeah, that little guard. Pulls out. There's your DC-DC converter. Probably wouldn't want to mix these up. So I did decide to go ahead and pull the hard drive out, and it is an ST225. Okay, so I've put it all back together, minus the hard drive, which is still sitting out here. I've decided I am going to image the hard drive in another PC before actually powering up the hard drive in here, because it's an old hard drive. You just don't know how many more power cycles it's good for. So let's get an image off of it while we can. That way, if the hard drive fails, I can always restore the image to a different hard drive. This is all back together. Empty slot hard drive was. So this concludes part 1 of the series on this Convergent NGEN PC. In the next part, I'm going to figure out what to do about that monitor connector. It really seems like the next step. I'm going to power this thing on. I'm going to hook a breakout board up to the monitor connector. I'm going to take an oscilloscope to it, and I'm going to see which pins seem to have stuff that looks like video signals, and we'll try to see if we can get video out of it. Okay, again, if you know anything about this machine, if you have technical manuals, if you are an engineer who worked on it, if you know what that pinout is on the video connector, that would be like hugely useful to know that. It would save me going out with the oscilloscope and trying to figure it out on my own. Even though I think I probably stand a good chance of doing it, I don't know for sure that I can pull it off. Anyhow, that's it for part 1. Stay tuned for part 2. Thank you for watching my video. Please visit my website at www.smbaker.com for more electronics projects and sandrail stuff. Bye.